Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to episode 12 of Raised Red, Living Blue. I am Sloan Roden, joined by
Jason Will,
my illustrious co-host.
Yeah.
How are you today?
I'm good. It's a lot.
Okay. Work,
it's a
family,
lot.
Politics.
Just the politics. I think work's going really, really well. How about you? Are you staying busy?
Work's hard right now because anybody that I'm working with that is a Democrat is holding off.
Yeah.
Because they want to see like how things shake out. And, you know, we've got to be great, good stewards of our money. And if they have any like trepidation of selling a house where they have a large amount of equity in and taking that to buy the next one, that's already a process that takes a lot of time and thought, and you want to be very committed. And so like, I can't blame people for being hesitant.
No.
It just sucks because a lot of my clients are Democrats. That's something, just the age that we are and how we grew up. And then kind of anybody that I'm talking with that like wants to sell pretty quickly is because they're looking to move out of state. So it's this time where we are needed and we are called to this job, but there's a sadness around it, which makes me sad. So it's just, we're here to help people.
I saw where the NAR chief economist this week on a podcast was talking very positively about mortgage rates stabilizing around 6.25.
Okay.
I didn't have a chance to listen to it, but I was just curious as to where that optimism comes from, because I don't feel like any financial market, be it the stock market, the real estate market, nothing's really stable. The bond market, nothing is stable at this point. It's all very walking on eggshells. Let's wait and see type mode. Yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting time to be alive. But what was griping your ass? This could be a segment, a Sloan segment. What's griping Sloan's ass this week?
Okay. Sloan's griping her ass this week. Man, this is going to be a good segment. It is the Republican Congress people and their picture they took on the tarmac in front of Air Force One as they were headed to the Super Bowl. And it looks like they're a bunch of influencers. Like, they're all gathered together, and it's Katie Britt and Lindsey Graham and a bunch of other people. And they're like hugging each other with Air Force One in the background. And it's like, yeah, going to the Super Bowl. Thanks, Trump, for inviting us. And it like made me want to throw up, especially after like you could see on Katie Britt's Instagram that like they were all at Mar-a-Lago this past weekend together. So like it felt very like lifestyles of the rich and famous.
Yeah.
And like where like the world is burning, but it's like it feels very like champagne and caviar for everybody.
Right.
Like it just that was my griping my ass. Do you know which picture I'm talking about?
No, I did not see it.
It looked like influencers or Real Housewives or like something like just very, very, very wealthy, over the top, taking pictures, putting it out, that whole PJs and yachts and, diamonds, oh my kind of thing. And it just was icky from the people that we elected to serve the community.
Yes, and that's the Republicans. Oh my God, the genius of the Republicans. Yeah, what a cast, what a crew there. But the genius of the Republicans is that they represent the 1%, but they've convinced the 99% to support them because they're going to help them or give them an opportunity to join the 1%, and you're going to be like, you're going to love it when you get to the 1%. But these are people that really rely on some of these programs that are getting cut. Said this many times, I do a lot of work in really rural, low socioeconomic areas of these very rural counties. And, these people's homes are falling apart.
Yeah.
But the newest accessory, the newest amenity to their property is the pristine Trump flag that's draped across the roof, or, the big flag pole in the yard. It's amazing. So,
I would say that's like one time where I would love to have been in an HOA and then like make those people take them down.
Yeah. So these people are like, we ain't in no HOA.
Yeah.
And take my flag over my dead body. My ass is griped, I think, this morning over
gripe your ass?
The Democrats. Like, I'm going to hammer the Democrats a little bit today and really encourage them. I want to speak to all the heads of Democratic parties across the United States. And then, of course, this newly elected guy that's running the DNC to, because we've talked about this, right? A common theme on this podcast is learning from history. And I don't feel like the Democrats are learning from history. And I feel like they're perpetuating a cycle that is going to bite them in the ass. But also, inflation's going the wrong way.
Which does not bode well for interest rates.
No. Well, here's the thing. So if you want to try to find some positive news, like the cost of cereal's going down. All right. But car insurance, airline tickets, and then the big ones, fuel and eggs, all on the up and up. Eggs are up 15.2%. Fuel's up 6.2%. I don't know. It's scary stuff. But the whole message from the White House is that, it's going to get worse before it gets better. So just kind of hang on. But in the meantime, have you noticed another gripe of my ass this week could have been the Gulf of America?
Right.
Because this is effing genius. I mean, everybody is. Have you seen the flurry of posts in your news feeds about Gulf of America, and then people saying, "Oh, I got my swag." They've got their T-shirt. They've got their hat.
No, the thing I saw this week about Gulf of America is AP has refused to use Gulf of America, and they have now been removed as having access to the White House and to Trump. So they are no longer like in the press room. It feels like a tantrum of a petulant child. And it's like, and the things I've been
feels authoritarian to me.
Yeah, true. It's like, okay, so like, what about freedom of the press?
Yeah. It's like Jessica Tarloff was talking about how she's seeing very little resistance from journalists, or she seems, I don't know if she was suggesting that journalists are being silenced on X based on the new Musk algorithm, or whether they're just like, they're giving up. They're like, fuck it, this platform is not going to let us be heard or seen.
Right. I mean, that's a great point, because that's primarily how I used Twitter, from the very beginning. It was journalists and news organizations, James Spann, National Weather Service. So anything that you needed immediately and fast and quick updates, like that's how I used it. And it just, has gone off the rails. I feel like so many, blue dots are heading over to blue sky because they're like, we don't want to participate in this Elon Musk, bubble or company. One thing I heard this week on Raging Moderates, Tesla demand is down in the international markets. I mean, so people are seeing what he's doing. And this is one, I think this was one positive that came out of this week's episode, is it's like, the only thing these people care about is their bottom line. And so like hit them where it hurts. And like T-Mobile just announced on the Super Bowl that they're partnering with Starlink. Don't get T-Mobile, was it United who is American Airways? One of the airlines is now partnering with Starlink, which goes into a conversation we've had before of people boycotting or choosing not to shop with corporations that are rolling back their DEI policies. And so like this is a thing that I've really tried to do, and it is hard, and I have to lean into like that good, better, best mentality. But like, vote with your dollars.
Yeah. Well, I think, and that's what a lot of people thought they were doing this past election cycle. And, I've got a better, cleaner way of putting it, thanks to Scott Galloway this morning. But, I've been saying, I've been running around my house spouting fuck around and find out like all this past week. But it's interesting because I'm not sure, as I've said, I'm kind of out of whack. I usually am just absorbing podcasts every single day. But I don't know if it was the last episode or the episode before last, Scott Galloway was like, Democrats need to go down to the Department of Education, and basically chain themselves to a column and get arrested and just, and fight, and I totally disagreed with that.
And now they're saying it looks like what actually happened, what Democrats actually, the ones that showed up are ones that are, so secure in their very, blue state position. And it looked like old people at the nursing home rioted because they took away Jello night.
It's so bad.
Yeah.
It's so bad.
And I completely get this like trepidation of like, where do you act? Where do you not act? Because like, if you don't get reelected, like how can you continue? But then are you putting your future above the constituents? My thing is like, I'm not a politician and I'm not in those positions and don't have to make these decisions, but I can see where making them and choosing where to act and how to act is, it's a very delicate dance. We texted about this a little bit this week in preparation, and I'm glad to hear it on this podcast as well. But it's like, I don't know what the Democrats can be doing. The Republicans hold both chambers in Congress and the presidency. There's a Republican majority in the courts. But as these things are happening and these executive orders and the rollbacks of funding, you are seeing action in the courts, and judges are already ruling that like, no, you can't freeze this funding. You must continue this funding. Now, if Trump and them throw a bird and say, no, I don't know what happens next, but, and sometimes you have to let, the wheels of bureaucracy work. But like right now, I'm seeing the reactions, it seems like, in the way they are supposed to. And then we have to remember 26, we've got an election again next year for midterms.
Yeah.
And 25 is an election year in the state of Alabama. It is not just every 4 years. And like what we saw in 2018 is progress can be made in the midterms.
Well, so first thing is that I love Scott was talking about, you just mentioned a Mel Robbins book or something like that.
Which is what I've started listening to it.
Okay.
It's so good.
So that's where I'm at. I'm on the let them. Just let them break it. Let them screw it up as bad as they can. I understand that you're like, well, shit, what if the cost is democracy itself? What if the cost is at the peril of the Constitution? Let me give you an example. I saw a brief clip of a Democratic congressman was screaming impeachment. The impeachment of Donald Trump has already begun. And I wanted to throw up. And that's where I'm like, are we not learning from history? You can't do that shit.
Yep.
So when the Democrats are fighting the way they're fighting right now, to me, sends a message to the American people that they want to hold on to that they're fighting to hold on to a corrupt government. They're fighting to hold on to, bloated bureaucracy. They're fighting to hold on to excessive spending and waste and fraud and all those things. They feed the narrative of the Republicans. I think what they should be doing, I think they should be doing interviews, of course, on TV, but we know from the past election that's not where they're reaching people. So podcasts, get on there and talk about it, but they need to put the onus back on the Republicans, and that is where this is going to have to come from. I believe is that somebody in the Republican Party, some group or faction, maybe it is the Lincoln Project folks. I don't know. We're going to have to stand up and go, whoa, wait a minute. This is going too far. And then, like you said, there's going to be accountability in the elections, but they need to, vote their conscience. But I feel like the way they're doing it right now, like you said, I mean, it's laughable to the right.
Yeah. And, I've been noodling on this term progressive because in politics, the right uses the term progressive like it's a dirty word. But then when you think of it in like the private sector, I think of, okay, what's a synonym for progressive? A disruptor. Like disruptors in the private sector are like heralded.
Championed.
And so it's like, I don't get where the difference is, but it also feels like the Democrats, what's supposed to be the progressives, are continuing to lean on old style of doing Democrat work. And we can't use old tools to fight this new Republican battle. I mean, like, we're clearly not winning that. So while they're breaking their system, maybe we also need to break ours.
100%.
Jessica made a great point yesterday about talking about the vouchers program, which the things that I've read and the people I've talked to sounds like it is a terrible, terrible idea. You are just transferring wealth from lower income people to the wealthy, which was interesting. I was, side note, listening to an interview with, it was on NPR, and it was about the lottery and scratch offs and how there is an unequal distribution of the state funds. Scratch offs and lottery tickets are more bought in lower income areas, but they don't reap, like, the percentage of benefits that they reap is less than what they pay in.
Wow.
So then that's just, my gosh, another example. It was crazy that these two examples came like within 24 hours of each other for me. But it was like just another example of how taking, money from one, putting it into the other. And that, I mean, I feel like when I was in college, that was the biggest argument that was on Fox News against Hillary Clinton, is she wants the redistribution of wealth. But like, it feels like the wealthy's already getting those benefits. I don't know. There's a lot of like, me think you doth protest too much on the right, like things that they're already doing. But I'm so sorry I digressed in that. But I mean, she made a great point. Like, we can't just say, oh, it's working when we know it's not. So maybe the answer isn't these voucher programs, but what are things that we can bring to show, okay, you admit the system's broken and I admit the system's broken and you want to do this. We think you should do this. And I think that's when you start to meet in the middle. I mean, like, you and I know the best of negotiation. Like, nobody 100% wins. Everybody has to give something. And in order to get something, like, you also have to come to the table with almost like a show of like good faith and goodwill that you're willing to work. And so I hope we see a progressive mindset, an out of the box, a new way of thinking from our Democratic Party in order to get some things done.
I hope so too. I haven't seen much that gives me optimism in that regard. I think what maybe their saving grace is that, that Trump was elected on promises to lower prices for inflation, and it's not happening. And Katie Britt, I just love hammering her on every episode, but she's like talking out of both sides of her mouth. She trolled the Democrats this week about, in defense of Elon Musk, was saying, about the co-president. I don't know if you saw that, but she was like, okay, so Elon's Trump's co-president. Well, Biden had, his chief of staff. Everybody was Biden had like 4 co-presidents because he was, sleeping most of his presidency. But
well, which is hilarious since like we've seen all those clips where reporters were directing the questions to Elon Musk, and Trump looks there like he's out of it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like it's like, well, you're kind of playing into this narrative. What the fuck is on your cup?
Okay, so this is a talking point. You're gonna have to describe it to the people.
Okay, it is. Okay, so last week Jason left his therapy mug. We all have our emotional support water bottles. Jason left his Stanley. And he walked in with a new one, which I figured he would. And he has had it turned away from me. And all of a sudden, he picked it up to take a little swig. And it is.
What does it say?
It is yellow. It has a patch of grass. It has a snake with 2 stars flanking the snake. And don't tread on me. Underneath it.
What is this symbol to you when you see it?
It feels like something that the right has taken the past few years.
Okay.
Which is funny because I have seen this on Instagram with a new bottom underneath. It was it's the bus driver who he wouldn't allow ICE agents on board, on the bus. And his response was, gargle my balls. So I've been seeing this with gargle my balls underneath.
And she loves balls.
Okay.
Right.
What does don't tread on me symbolize to you?
So, we have also talked about on this podcast about how you can be a Democrat and be a patriot. You can also be a Democrat and protest against government overreach. Which I feel like this is like, hey, this is.
I just feel like in these days that requires explanation.
Right.
But I appreciate your challenging, the protesting and trying to take back. Don't tread on me.
All right. So I went to just a very small Super Bowl gathering at a friend's house who is very, very MAGA. Okay. I've talked about him, very vaguely on this podcast many, many times, but I got a warning, okay, that his in-laws were in town and they're extremely right-wing.
He was just, okay.
And so just be weary of that. So I come strolling into the Super Bowl party with this, okay? And
do you like to bait people, Jason?
And my friend's father-in-law they just kind of made it known, like, hey, let's try to keep politics out of the conversation today. Jason's a Democrat. We just want to keep the peace during the Super Bowl party. And then I walk in with this, and it's kind of like, oh, he's stirring shit up. So the father-in-law definitely noticed that, and he was like, this is yours? I go, yeah. I've had this for like 2 years.
Yeah.
He's like, it doesn't seem like this would be something that you would have. And I said, well, I brought this in protest of women's reproductive rights. Because the government has taken away their freedom. And so this is exactly what this is against. So it goes into like what you were saying just a second ago about the progressives and how, being a disruptor is good in some circles and conversations and not in others.
Yeah. I hope I did not lose the sticker.
So it's just like, they cherry pick. It's the double standard we talk about all the time.
Yeah.
But you're seeing a lot of government overreach. I mean, right now we don't have 3 equal parts of government.
Right.
We're lacking in checks and balances.
Right.
I love what Jessica Tarlov was talking about Kristi Noem on some interview. I think one of the political talk shows or maybe on Fox and Friends about how she was talking about how, people don't trust the government. Well, those are seeds that Trump's been sowing for a decade, but I don't know if it was the interviewer or Jessica said, well, Christy, you are the government. I mean,
yes.
Trump is the government. I mean, so the only person that, you could make an argument that's not the government is Elon Musk. And that's what's freaking people out. This guy has no confirmation. He hasn't been vetted.
Yep.
He's got serious conflicts of interest. He's spreading misinformation. This whole misinformation about the condom thing. I mean, he just brushed that off during the Oval Office interview. Like, oh, we're going to make some mistakes. We want you guys holding us accountable when we say stuff's not true. Meanwhile, the damage is already done because all the MAGA rednecks are like, fuck them.
I had a really emotional hangover after last week's episode. I wasn't proud of how I responded to the questioning and our arguments over trans athletes in sports. Part of me was like, did Jason bait me for a reaction? But then I was thinking I was, in hindsight, I'm really thankful for the opportunity to do it here because you're never good at something without practicing it.
Mm-hmm.
And now I know what not to do because when you get angry and you lash out, anytime in an argument or discussion, that person immediately loses credibility. And so if you were somebody else, I would have lost all credibility in that argument, so then it's the whole thing would be a moot point. And at that point, people shut off and no opinions are changed. And so just trying to give myself grace and taking it as a learning experience, but just wanted to bring that up this morning.
So I thought that what I love about it or what I loved about last week's episode, and I found it to be kind of common on this show, is that some of this stuff just organically happens.
Yeah.
You were talking about the ski lift people on strike. And I was thinking when you wanted to talk about this, cause that's not really my world. When I go snow skiing, I snow ski on my butt, it's not pretty. I'm the guy that falls all the time. My family has a bunch of videos of me falling and I spend a lot of my time, back at the condo or the hotel or going to, going shopping or doing something else. So I didn't really totally get it, to be honest with you. But the more you laid it out, I was like, holy shit, this ski strike has relevancy across so much of what we're doing right now, talking about affordable housing, just all these different things, the wealth inequality gap. So I love the organic nature. I think if you listen to a lot of podcasts, we both work for a living. We've got other things and you've got the farm and I've got a lot of other projects I'm working on outside of real estate. So if this was our full-time gig, you and I would spend the whole week together.
Yes.
Producing the show, researching, talking, doing all these things. So,
and a lot of this, it's what we see, what we've come across, what we've listened to, and what we've had the time and mental capacity to maybe take some notes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is not a journalistic endeavor.
No, I would love it if it could be.
Right.
I would love to do this full time and get paid for it, but that's not our reality. And so it just brings this organic element to the show, this unrehearsed element to the show. And I did not come in here with that game plan last week. It just kind of happened.
Yeah.
And so I loved it. And I just wondered if the DM or the comment we got, I think, was it on TikTok or whatever, if that helped you just to know that somebody appreciated the conversation.
I don't think it was about this week's episode because I don't think any of, or last week's episode, I don't think any of those shorts have made it to TikTok yet. I think it was in response to the original one about trans athletes, which now has 27,000 views.
So maybe there will be some backlash coming.
But he was saying hey, I appreciate you touching on it. There's a lot of layers to it and a lot of misogyny around women's sports. And he said, like, I think a lot of this comes from like people don't understand like what it means to be transgender. And I'm sure there's a lot of that. And, I said, because in a lot of these, especially DMs, I say it's me. So they, just know like which one of us they're talking with.
Yeah.
And I said, like, please, like, if I have not used inclusive language, or if I've used incorrect language, or language that's, like, not so much up to date, because a lot of inclusive language is changing.
Right.
Please let me know. And he was like, if you, really just like, if you have any questions about any of this, like, I'm more than happy to engage.
Which I think we should. I loved it. And I think I hope more people do engage. And I hope, that you engage with these people. I've gotten totally off TikTok. I don't know if you know that or not. And encourage them to keep providing their opinions, but just, developing side conversations outside of this podcast is really, really great. And I hope it happens with somebody on the right soon. Like, gosh, you guys have really helped me, change my perspective a little bit.
Yeah. Josh, his episode, he shared it to his Instagram, and somebody he knows responded and was like, I really, really appreciate like your viewpoint and insight. And he sent a screenshot to me and was like, I'm pretty sure this person is very conservative.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So I think like opening, of us and our hearts and minds, beginning that vulnerability hopefully has somebody on the other side open their vulnerability.
Well, it's interesting that because Josh was saying that even his like most elite friends and associates are 1 or 2 steps away from bankruptcy, so that we aren't, even though we may live in different areas of town, we may drive, newer, nicer cars, have nicer clothes. At the end of the day, we're really not all that different. So this is all going to affect us, not equally, but
right. And we are closer to this extreme than we are this other extreme.
Yes. So, that I think maybe that's like when I'm talking about my strategy for the Democrats, it's podcasts, it's town halls, it's interviews. It's just saying, hey, I think this is unconstitutional. It's just more of a pragmatic approach instead of yelling impeachment.
Yep.
But on that note, let's take a break. All right. Well, welcome back.
Welcome back, everybody.
What do you want to talk about now?
Okay, I have 2.
Is it Hammer Katie Britt time?
Not yet. We'll get to that next.
Damn it.
I kind of want that maybe to take a little longer. Okay. I really wanted to focus on things that affect us, either like in Alabama or in our industry.
Love it.
We are not pundits, and so it's like, goes back to that like niche mentality and strategy. So the first thing I want to talk about today is the freezing of and the RIP of the Consumer Federal Protection Bureau, the CFPB.
I think that is probably, out of all would you agree, out of the Department of Education and USAID, like this is probably the most impactful to us as Americans?
Yes. Yeah. As to it hits on, or it touches every single one of us. And now I will say the next, the 2 topics I want to talk about today both hit us in our jobs, is the CFPB and the NIH funding. So first on CFPB, for anybody that doesn't know, it was created as part of the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform Act, that was signed into law by Obama in 2010, and was in response to the 2008 financial crisis, which rocked the United States.
So I just real quick, want to interject that that's what happens when there is a lack of oversight.
Yes.
We can't be trusted as humans.
Correct.
Not to take advantage of each other financially, physically.
Yes. Were you selling real estate in 2008?
Yes, I started in 2004.
Okay. What was, that like leading up to in the financial crisis, maybe like, what was that like 6 to 12 like for you? Like, how did you feel it in our industry as these things changed?
So, I mean, I think, it was still, I was in Florida in 2006. So the market was still relatively hot, but I was talking to my realtor friends back in Alabama and they're like, ooh, it's really starting to cool. So there was a cooling off period.
Where were you in Florida?
In Tampa.
Okay.
The cooling off period was slower, I'm sorry. I had that backwards.
Okay.
Yes, because it went like this: East Coast, West Coast, into Middle America.
Yeah. It was cooling for you. Yeah.
Yeah, I was talking to, and so we were thinking about moving back because we had started to have kids. We didn't have any parents around. And that's really, really tough. So I was talking to my Alabama friends. I was like, man, the market here is really going through some rapid changes. How is it back home? I'm like, oh, it's great. So I was like, okay, good. I'm going to go back to a stable market, sell.
And that's one thing I will say that they've said about Alabama is we don't hit the highs as high, but we don't hit the lows as low, and we're lagging. So we can see the things happening on the coast.
Right.
And it just doesn't hit us as much, but we still feel it.
Yeah. I just, to me, what 2008 did for my business though is, and this was also, I think, reinforced by the oil spill in 2010.
Oh shit.
Is that, because I'd always looked at real estate as just too volatile of an industry to be long-term. Okay. Like I just got in it. I was like, I'm getting in it when it's good. I'm going to make some money. I'm going to use this money to maybe start another business.
Okay.
That, where maybe, it's not so susceptible to economic factors and natural disasters and things like that. But that's what it did for me is go, man, if you just keep your head down and stick with the fundamentals, you're going to be fine no matter what's happening. So I don't get worried about really anything anymore, which, a lot of realtors, when the way they interpret like the stress or I always like equate it to like when you're a real estate agent, you're either flush with cash or you're broke as a joke. But when you're flush with cash, it's like the sand running out of the hourglass.
Oh, yeah.
But they tend to paralyze. They tend to freeze when things get tough. And I just keep moving. But yeah, I mean, what that told us was we saw it happening.
Yeah.
When did you get your license?
I'll give you a little background. Okay, so I graduated in spring of 11. Fall of 11, I got a job at Wells Fargo. I was processing HARP loans. And so that was when the refi business, it had already begun and was crazy good.
Yeah.
And it was these kind of started out as like a no doc refi, but then moved to like very few documents. If it was somebody self-employed, like we had to do tax returns anyway, but, if that just like a W-2 or like a 1099 to verify income, move on. Thank you. Like really the only way you'd need bank statements was to verify large deposits.
Right.
But we were churning and burning. Then I got a job as an LOA, a loan officer's assistant, and then got my license in fall of 13.
Okay.
I will say for us, what I've heard on Housing Wire, their podcast, is they're saying, even if they cut the CFPB, I think like the truth in lending side, which affects us and our job more, that's the arm that we really deal with. I think like those rules are still in place. There just won't be like other rules rolled out. And like those are so important because that's what required clear loan disclosures and fee sheets so that borrowers, when they are, shopping for a lender, know what they're being charged and what they expect to pay.
Yeah.
And so I think those are protections because, like you said, look, we as humans can't be trusted, especially when it comes to making money and ways to make money, which sometimes cheats consumers. The biggest part in this that I think is going to harm people is the protections of corporate frauds, scams, overdraft fees, that really limited a lot of these fees that financial institutions could charge people, especially like payday loans, things that were viewed as harmful and predatory to people. That rollback is really what's going to harm consumers. I don't think it's going to hit us in our jobs as much. Let's see. Okay, it was set up to protect consumers from questionable financial products, corporate frauds, and scams. It's a law enforcement agency. It takes big financial institutions to court who cheat consumers, whether it's a credit reporting agency, a large bank, or a credit card giant. And there's smoking out financial abuse was CFPB's bread and butter, having recovered over $21 billion to people who were cheated by Wall Street and others. And this is from U.S. News. It was like, he was really helping people who had been wronged. It was like, yeah, the CFPB put rules in place, but as we can see, like, credit card companies and others were still, not following them. And so it provided one place for consumers to go and file complaints. And then the CFPB would fight it on their behalf. And now with it effectively shut down, it is up to us as the consumers to know what to look for and then like who to go to. One argument is that it's very redundant and there's a lot of people, or maybe not companies, but like government arms that do this. But the CFPB created a centralized place for it. So if you have been, you have to know like what it is and that you've been wronged. Then you have to go like search and find who you file it with. So it's putting a lot more work on the consumers.
The only thing I would just want to say, like what I've already said, is like, we can't be trusted to treat each other fairly, to not take advantage of each other. We can't be trusted with the environment. The problem is that, I think the left has taken it too far. You look at California and all the regulations that, conservatives complain about in that state, business owners complain about in that state, people that are trying to recover from the fires, now the floods, are just like, come on, people. But I'm going to hammer this, I think, maybe in my closing statement, just about how too much is happening too fast right now.
The blitzkrieg.
Yeah, it's the blitzkrieg of broken shit. Too much is happening without Congress that has been like Congress's job.
Yeah.
They were talking about these buyouts for these workers. Yeah. Like the money hasn't even been appropriated to pay them through September or October, or whatever.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, it's this, decisions are being made by somebody who has always worked in the private sector, and it does not work that way in the government. Like, you can't just say, yes, we are going to pay you without approval of like the appropriations committee and then Congress.
Yeah. That's what's scaring me. But I would just say this, we have to take ownership of really both sides. I think this is a monster that the Democrats have created for, what Biden didn't do anything in terms of cutting, slashing, reforming. There really wasn't a whole lot. And so even though there's a lot of chaos and a lot of fear and a lot of unknowns about what the consequences, because there's going to be a lot of consequences.
And they made that known well on the campaign trail.
Oh yeah, this is no, and so this,
Like,
and that's the other thing.
You will hurt, and then it'll get better. And the problem is, the 1% can hurt. The 99% can't. Like,
Yeah.
they don't have they're not as risk averse.
You know, they're just insulated. You know, they can afford to go pay $12 for, a dozen eggs. They're, you know, it's like, oh, this sucks, but it just doesn't affect them the same way.
Well, this is, brings up a comment we got on TikTok. And this lady said, y'all are leaving out the argument of birth control. It's just so easy to get birth control these days.
What does that mean? Where is she going with that?
I think with like talking about the Dobbs decision. And it's like, one, we got a couple holes. We got a couple holes in this argument.
Oh, why aren't people using birth control?
Yes.
Okay.
Which I've responded, and I don't know if I have any engagement, but somebody else did respond, and that was fun to witness. Oh.
Now I'm getting fucking TikTok FOMO.
Yeah. Okay. So one, then, which I don't agree with, that I don't think this is a real argument. She is then saying, well, then people are getting abortions as a form of birth control. And that's not always true. You know, then the other side is, okay, well, there is a lacking of sex education in this country.
Oh, now they want to take it all out.
Now they want to take it all out. So like, when guys and girls like don't know what happens, or like what contraception to use and how to use it, and what like that promotes pregnancy, and just like using, what's it called when you don't have sex?
Abstaining.
Not chastity, not abstain. There's a word. Just using that mentality is also like, it doesn't work either. But then like another argument is like the lack of sex education is one, but then it's like that comes from a very, very place of privilege of like, you have access to a doctor and have the extra money to pay for birth control. I mean, at one time, I think I was paying $50 a month, and that was 15 years ago. I don't know what it is now, but then there's a cost to it. So it was way, she made it way too simplified, which shows like this is a much bigger thing and comes from a place of privilege and not having exposure. And that, man, it just continued our themes. I don't like that she was like, she's still continuing. This is a woman doing this and is still continuing to put the sole responsibility on the woman. When
which I don't get.
Which is a shared response. So it
just goes back to, I think, what you were saying, because I was like, when was it? Was it the first episode we did? And I was like, where the hell were all these women? Like, why didn't they get off the couch and go kick some of this misogynistic ass at the ballot box? And you were saying, I think it was just about years, like hundreds of years of indoctrination and brainwashing, and that you can see the evidence of that. And, you know, it goes back to, I need to do some research on, you know, the Republican strategy that started happening, I believe, in the 70s, where these really rich people were like, hey, the more we demonize the left, that's the key. It's the politics of fear is the way that we obtain power and hold on to it. But going back to the Raging Moderates podcast, we were saying, like, it's just brilliant that the Republicans have been able to convince the 99% that they're on their side.
Yep.
But they've been doing that for years. And the whole, I think, secret sauce of that strategy is like, you can be a part of the 1%. We can get you out of the trailer.
What's that American dream? Yeah.
And it's bullshit.
Yep.
But my hope and optimism is, I think one of the main points that Jessica and Scott were making is that the polarization, the separation, the animosity on both sides is ramping up.
Yep.
My hope, my optimism is that is going to come full circle, and it's going to come out on both the ends of both sides and push us together. Because at the end of the day, I mean, the 1% is always going to be the 1%. But at the end of the day, just like Josh was saying, we're not all that different. We're not all that far apart.
Yep.
And that's another reason why I buy shit like this.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to see me with a rebel flag on my car anymore, or stickers, or doing that kind of crap anymore. But some of this other stuff is very beneficial.
Yep. Swing back to and finish CFPB.
Yeah, finish it up. Take us home.
There are some, it's like the more I learn about the areas that Elon Musk is targeting under Doge, it seems like he is strategically targeting departments that when they shut down will help him. And that scares me. It feels very strategic and targeted. So sending and receiving of like digital money, so Venmo, PayPal, Zelle, Apple Pay, Google Pay, etc. right now fall under the CFPB. And when the CFPB not there, you know, like they don't fall under the same regulations as brick and mortar financial institutions. So like, who is going to regulate those? Now we take it a step further. X is about to launch their own form of digital payment system. So the slashing of CFPB, getting rid of these regulations, will help him in this next venture under X.
Well, they've already started. They're slashing NASA too.
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry.
Again, you know, so yeah, so it
I just don't understand. It's almost to me like he doesn't give a shit about Tesla. Like that could go to the trash can.
Right. Yeah, because he's so diversified and can take losses one place because he's gaining them other places. I also don't like his hands are in all these pots of places that he has government contracts like NASA. And I'm not getting to that today, but I want to stick on this. Musk's aides operating under Doge have appeared to gain access to all CFPB computer systems. This is from a Washington Post article. So one question is, does this mean Elon Musk has access to non-public information about his competition? So there's these
100%.
layers of like getting rid of this benefits his bottom line. It eliminates his regulations. Now he can see what his competitors are doing. And like, there are, I mean, they've now been stopped, but CFPB was like going after some of them. So like he can see all of that information. There have been 2 lobbying companies that represent these digital banking. I don't know if that's the correct term or not. Their names are NetChoice and TechNet. NetChoice is backed by PayPal, which Musk was a founder. And then this guy, Mark Anderson, he is a Silicon Valley venture capitalist. His firm, his VC firm, invested in a startup called Lend Up Loans, which the CFPB shut down in 2021. And now Mark Anderson has become a Trump advisor. Just feels like these people have qualms with these regulations, having their hand in their private interest. So they've now found a way to squirrel into Trump, make government decisions that then affect their bottom line.
It's just like both sides were against TikTok. They're like, it's a national security thing. We need to ban it. A Republican donor gave Trump $100 million reportedly because he is heavily invested in TikTok. And now all of a sudden we're going to save TikTok. I mean, it's everywhere you look.
Yep. And
that's what a kleptocracy is.
Yeah. I will say, like, I'm not so completely against like lobbyists. Like, we both give to our PAC, our realtor PAC. But I believe that our PAC does the greater good for consumers that helps protect private property rights. But like you said, two things can be true. Where I believe in our pack, there is a dark side to them, and these people are using it. So like the CFPB shutting down started with, oh gosh, this affects us in our industry, and how is it going to affect consumers? And now it has gone to this dark side of the 1% want to cut regulations so they can continue to make money for their company, their shareholders, their bank account. And maybe I'm late to the party and figuring out that's what these people do.
I think that's what they do, and that's what they've always done.
Mm-hmm.
I think how we learn from history is say, we need regulation because we as humans cannot be trusted.
And these companies can't be trusted.
No. I mean, nobody.
Because their fiduciary is to their... this goes for any company, anywhere.
Right.
Their fiduciary is to their shareholders, not to the protection of consumers. And we get that in our industry because our fiduciary is to, one, our clients, but, we take it a step further to our households to be a provider. But then you have our licensing board, the Alabama Real Estate Commission, which is a regulatory, could be, seen as a regulatory agency. It's a licensing commission. And their job is to ensure that we as individuals are not harming the consumer.
Well,
and so these things are repetitive in all industries.
Well, I gave you an example of like what was going on 2006, 2008, 2010, like before 2008, you had a very deregulated environment.
Yeah.
Post 2008,
from the mortgage companies and the lenders, but people that couldn't get loans or could buy multiple houses and shouldn't have, it in turn helped us.
Yeah, it was. I mean,
there was no denying based on income or credit.
What I saw, what I participated in, what I was trying to do, how I was trying to get a leg up, who I was associating with. But it was very much a good old boy, environment, like where you would take your appraiser. You could have a preferred appraiser. We can still have preferred lenders, but we had a preferred appraiser, so we could have our appraiser could be our fishing buddy, our hunting buddy.
Yeah.
And I can say, hey man, I really need this value. Hope you had a good time last weekend. I really need this value to come through this week.
Yep. Which I'm glad you said that, just as a little bit of, how the sausage is made. The creation and requirement of appraisal management companies, which we in our industry refer to as AMCs, that was created because of the Dodd-Frank Act. And I know on my side, when I worked for Wells Fargo, like I, as representing the lender, could not speak to the appraiser. I had to send any information, even like, when can I expect this in? Or I need an update. Everything had to go through the AMC to make sure that was that like wall, nobody pierced the corporate veil kind of thing from the lender to the appraiser. And from there, just a little bit how it works on our side, the appraiser reaches out to the listing agent, not the buyer's agent, but it's really like to confirm how to access it. And then we can have the opportunity to give some additional information to, provide context or like maybe like justification. But it's very professional and segmented, and everybody has their role. And that is a positive that came out of the Dodd-Frank Act.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, like two things can be true at the same time.
Yes.
We're just moving into this good old boy who environment again that is very, very dangerous for consumers.
Very pay to play.
Yeah. And I don't know how people don't see it. Well, I do know it's the disinformation, because I mean, people,
it's hard. I mean,
this is why this sumbitch had his child on his shoulders. I mean, this is a guy who doesn't live with any of his kids. I don't think he is going to win any Father of the Year
Nope.
awards.
Nope.
But all of a sudden now he's got this toddler on his shoulders
Yep.
everywhere through the
Yep.
Capitol in
Yep.
DC. And so him asking, saying, hey, picking his nose and having to pee and all that stuff. It was so cute, but it was very distracting to the lack of transparency, to the disinformation about the condoms, the $50 million in condoms.
Yeah.
At that Super Bowl party,
God bless you.
that I crashed, I did kind of engage in a couple little side conversations, but one of the
At least they were side conversations.
I just it wasn't like a Thanksgiving. I didn't want it to become like a Thanksgiving dinner situation, but
God no.
I was just like, I'm just asking. I was just coming from curiosity, which I think is a great strategy for a lot of folks. It's a very powerful strategy, but they, view Elon as like the epitome of wisdom, of intelligence, of business savvy. They see Trump the same way. So you got two highly uber successful people that are in their minds wanting to save the country.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas
we
the
see
point
them as grifters
you made is like they're doing this to benefit each other, to help their friends out so that everybody can get richer. I mean, Trump came into office this time richer than he was before. He's selling all this fucking merch.
Yeah.
I mean, RFK
meme
Jr.
coins, he's made billions of dollars off these meme coins, or maybe he's made millions and people have lost billions. I mean,
True Social, the fake currency.
Yeah.
I mean, the list goes on and on. It's just all the merch, all the stuff. I mean, RFK Jr. was making money off of $26 infant onesies that said, I said no to the vax or whatever. It's just very, very gross.
Yeah.
But this is why I'm saying is that about public perception, I think, is not going to change by screaming, yelling, impeachment, and all these other things.
Well, and as the right feels that the quote mainstream media is too progressive and that people on the right are now, if they only get their news from, I mean, I would say even like Fox is like the best of the options now. But I mean, if they're on OAN, if it's Joe Rogan, if it's Charlie Kirk, like they are taking what these people are saying as fact when they are fiction. And I remember when I had stepped away from Fox, moved out of my parents' house, got my own apartment, started watching MSNBC, and then flipping back over to Fox. It was like eye-opening, the things that I were taking as fact and seeing, okay, like this is one journalistic approach, and I wouldn't even call like this is an opinion news. And so
it's just, like Bill O'Reilly is trying to tell people that he doesn't believe that Elon Musk has as much power. He believes that President Trump has his thumb more on Elon Musk than he probably really does, and that he doesn't have as much power as people think he has. And
no, my assumption is I think Elon is granting himself more power than Trump thinks he has. I think Trump is probably like doing the delegating thing. I assume
he does
as a CEO kind of does. It's like you do this and you do this and you do this and let me know. And Elon is just like running free, which, I mean, he was not appointed. He was not voted on. This is like I don't even know, like, how did we even get a new government department with a snap of fingers? The whole thing, and this was interesting that, was it Raging Monitor or somebody else said that like Clinton had something like this when he was president. It was just called something else and it was viewed as an auditing.
Oh my gosh. This, I've
got to pee so bad.
You do?
Yes.
Well,
we're going to have to take a quick break and then maybe wrap this and then, get to NIH.
Well, before we go pee, the only thing I want to say is if Democrats were doing even a small percentage of what's happening with the Republican, there would be murders. There would be death. There would be violence. I mean, you want to talk about insurrection. It would be January 6th on steroids. All right, let's take a break. Go pee.
Thanks everybody for going on that CFPB journey with us. I thought it was going to be really straightforward, and oh gosh, nothing these days is straightforward or linear. But next, I want to talk about the cutting of funding, or excuse me, the capping of indirect cost expense to the NIH. And this feels very much like a fuck around and find out. How it hits us close to home is UAB, the University of Alabama at Birmingham. With these cuts, AL.com estimates they will lose $70 million in funding. UAB is the largest economic driver in the city of Birmingham. And based on where I looked, I received different pieces of information, but is one of the top employers in the entire state.
Would not surprised.
So this hits us so close to home. I mean, and this is for medical research, so let's say doctors and surgeons could lose their funding, so they are losing jobs. Then we as a city are losing, not we as a city, we as like humanity are losing access to potential life-saving cancer treatments. I mean, UAB is one of the best cancer hospitals in the world. I mean, so this is impactful, not only us as the Birmingham and Alabama economy, but like for humanity.
And she made primary herself. I mean, out of this damn, because there's going to be consequences, and there is going to be hell to pay for a lot of this. Like you said, I mean, we've got elections, that are steadily going to be happening over the next couple of years. So it's interesting, it's I don't know. It's funny that her approach. I mean, she's coming out, speaking out against it, and at the same time, she's just hammering the Biden administration and the Democrats.
Yep.
So we'll see where it leads. But yeah, very, very interesting. You've got a lot of Republicans, I think, coming out and voicing their concerns. But it's just like, when, the right votes down money that's appropriated to states, but then comes back home and takes credit for the money.
Yep.
So it just seems like this is what she's doing.
Yep.
I mean, she's got to, in her defense, and I hate to defend her, she's got to walk a tight rope here, because like you've said, she's Trump's darling, but she's also supposed to be one of the state's biggest advocates.
A quote from AL.com. In 2024, UAB was in the top 1% of all NIH-funded institutions. And all 6 of UAB's health-related schools were in the top 15 public universities in NIH funding. Okay, recent NIH grants awarded to UAB include support for the STEM workforce, studying cardiovascular and kidney diseases, HIV education, and a type 2 diabetes clinical trial. Auburn University at Montgomery was recently awarded NIH funds to enhance STEM, biomedical research, and diversity. And then Auburn, Tuskegee, and Alabama State are also listed as recipients of NIH funding. I mean, so this goes UAB is the big one, but like this impacts, this impact is going to be felt across the state. Okay, so in this AL.com article, what happens next? So the funding cuts are scheduled for Monday unless the administration reverses course. UAB spokesperson said the university will, quote, continue to closely monitor and assess rapidly evolving departments. And then Britt and Kennedy are kind of going back and forth. This is the biggest thing. I saw this on BHAM Progressive Instagram's page last night. And somebody reached out to her and said her husband works for UAB. Her husband is part of is a head of department. who all met the other day, and they are saying, everyone call Katie Britt and the Attorney General. That is the way to do something about this. Is call Katie Britt, call Katie Britt, and call the Alabama Attorney General about this. I mean, there's a lot of that, like, we need to hammer the phones on right now, but from an economic standpoint, this is the biggest one. I'm scared we're going to get the same complaint here as like with other things. It's like, oh well, like when we said cutting, we meant targeted and strategic and not like this. And I think like when you have people who've like not worked in bureaucracy or like don't come from an auditing background, it's like firing all these inspector generals. Like, these people are trained to know what to look for and what to target. Like, then this shit happens.
Well, I just go back to like, if you cut regulations as it relates to the environment, people get sicker. So I understand that heart disease is a big killer, but so is cancer.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of this comes from the air we breathe. So I just, like, even if you don't believe in climate change, the data is irrefutable on like the environment's impact on our health. So like, if we're not going to we're going to cut the research that's going to help us counteract our own pollution, like the damage it does to not us but our, you know, future generations. I don't understand the thought process around this, but a lot of people, or there's a faction of people that are starting to voice their opinions and say, well, this is what gets me. Like when they say, we didn't expect this chaos, or we didn't know what we were signing up for this. And like you said, it was never a secret.
It has been, it's been like much faster than the first time around, but like, this was a Steve Bannon strategy. Like, this blitzkrieg is not brand new. This isn't the first time we've encountered it. It's just the first time we've encountered it in this first 100 days. And it is seriously like drinking out of a fire hydrant, which is what I'm trying to like find. What are the things that I can focus on and make an impact in?
Well, if you're listening or watching and you're a Steve Bannon fan, because I think one of the ways we can, you know, kind of take up arms in an effective way. I hate to even use that analogy, but Steve Bannon was pled guilty this week or recently to fraud, a border wall scheme where they defrauded people out of like $15 million. So, you know, we need to shine a light on the people around Trump that, you know, are the big proponents of the strategies, the ideas, or the big mouthpieces that are really bad people.
Yeah, well, and all the people that he said, like, who were being charged, and it's like, I'll cover you, I got you, and promised to pay for their legal fees and never did.
And left them hanging out to dry. Yeah. Punch Katie Britt in the nose one more time.
Right. So this is from The Independent. They asked Katie Britt if she had spoken with Musk. And she said, I think Elon is going to present these things to different agencies and departments. And then I think we'll have the opportunity to have these discussions and make some meaningful change. That seems naively optimistic. This is a made up department. It seems he is running in there with his band of lost boys, wreaking havoc, causing chaos. And like, there's no playbook, there's no expectations. So he's just like doing like he did at Twitter and slashing things. And then you have red states who 22 state attorneys general filed a lawsuit to stop the funding change. You know, so this is just what happens when you have somebody from the private sector come in and think that you can handle government like you can a privatized company. And it is so very different. But I think her optimism is so very naive because because this is a made up department, like there's not a set of rules laid out. When you do this, you have to bring it to these people and then we approve. Like they don't have any of that. So
I'm going to read you a couple quotes. All right. So the first one is her very gently pushing back. While the administration works to achieve this goal at NIH, a smart, targeted approach is needed. That's what she released in a statement.
I think everybody on both sides could agree on smart, targeted. It's like I think we could all agree on sensible legislation or sensible regulation.
Well, I just want to point out, I'm sticking to my, raging moderate, I think, voice in this is that there was no smart or targeted cuts that could have happened under Biden. The gosh damn border. I mean, like he did nothing. Kamala, where their borders are, is a freaking joke. The transgender operations in prisons. I mean, like it's all a gosh damn mess. And so the first thing they needed to do, because they're all like, how do you scratch your head and go, how did we lose this election when it's so freaking crystal clear, is beyond me. We're here where we are for a reason. All right, now let's get back to Katie Britt bashing. And this is how she's deflecting. She is defending Musk and his band of bros that live in their mom's basements that have all this unfettered access. And did you hear they're using sound machines to muffle their conversations that they're having in these government agency buildings that they're taking over? Britt says, we had a co-president for 4 years. Jill Biden, Jake Sullivan, Ron Klain, just to name a few. Now that President Trump is back in office, we have a true commander-in-chief again. Democrats can't stand his team is helping execute his agenda and fulfill his electoral mandate. That's about as irresponsible as it gets. I mean, not to mention, like I keep going back to this, not to mention that we have a insurrectionist, an election denier, a constitutional crisis creator, a sexual predator, a felon, and all these people around him went to jail. Mm-hmm. All these people around him are in the Republican quote unquote establishment have turned their back on him. Where
including
there is
Mitch
smoke,
McConnell.
There is fire. Oh, and
too little, too late.
Yeah.
Too little,
Mitch,
too late.
You spineless bastard.
You should not have blocked, Obama trying to put Merrick Garland on the Supreme Court.
No.
But they stood up there and they postured and they said, we own the Senate so we can do whatever the fuck we want. And
fuck around and find out.
Yep.
Here we come.
Yep.
All right. I want to plug something this week because we haven't plugged anything.
I know.
Do you not want to plug ourselves?
I was just trying to plug the pod. Which we need to do better about, like maybe doing it at the very beginning and not just the end.
Yeah, we should. All right. So how can people find us? We're still on the TikTok.
Yes.
You're still leading the TikTok charge.
Okay, fam. You can listen to us, support us, like, subscribe on Apple Podcast, Spotify, full episodes on YouTube, and you can see our digital shorts and engage with us on both Instagram and TikTok.
And you can find me at jasonwill.com.
Is that all for today?
That's all for today.
Oh, man.
All right. See you next week.
That felt very abrupt.
We may have we've been here for like a couple hours, but we may have a guest who's just like a raging, not a raging moderate. Come on very soon.
Yes. Has expressed willingness. We've not scheduled it yet.
All right. Well, hopefully we will. All right. See y'all next week.
Thanks, guys. See y'all next week.